Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Excuse me, let me introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Rizky Afriansyah and I as a first speaker from Group 6. Now I will talk about the developing teaching material and learning activities using literary works. The relationship between listening, tracking, reading, and writing language skill in the curriculum in school usually include four aspects, namely listening skill, speaking skill, reading skill, writing skill. These four language skills give anyone the opportunity to be able to create the right context in exchange of information. Mastering four language skill will also increase a person's confidence. Listening and reading are receptive skill because one does not need to produce a language. These two language skill put a person to be able to accept and understand the language. This skill a passive skill. Conversely, language skill that are both non-accepted and productive language skill, namely speaking and writing because a person produce language, those skill are effective skill. Listening. Listening is a language skill to be able to focus attention and digest the information. A person often has difficulty honing this language skill because one is required to understand the core of speech, not just know every word. Listener should focus on a conversation. Listening or listening skill can be trained at any time in everyday life. Speaker topics and visual codes can help us distinguish messages. To practice this language skill, we can listen frequently or hold discussion and conversation blocked by people with different background to us. The more focused we are in listening and the more diverse the background of the speaker, then our language skill in listening or listening can be harnessed. Parts such as vocabulary, spelling, language structure, or structure and writing. Speaking also enhances language intuition when we read the brain tries to assimilate the information and adopt it. And then the information is stored away in an auto time is available for both speaking and writing. Is writing. Writing is the activity of documenting information into a means of writing. With the development of social media, almost everyone writes about their activities as form of self-expression. Not to be mistaken, writing skill now seems to be considered the most necessary language skill. Good writing is the writing that is easy to digest to the use of simple, effective, and efficient sentence. When one can easily understand the subject matter of writing, that can be considered good because it's writing and skill.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Excuse me, let me introduce myself. My name is Taufik Qurachim, and I a second speaker from Group 6. Now I will talk about the how to write short story. How to write short story. Them is the core in writing a story, or can be said to be a heart of shortcut. Therefore, in a steam of the stress of the career, the beginning, the main requirement is the dam. When we want to write a short story, the thing that become the main truth is the dam. The message about what make the dam of life. The author will always communicate with himself in the process of writing the starts, even since the beginning of making. If confused to carry out the dam, then try creating a word where the simple word becomes a symbol of the whole story, such as the love that is with all ideas in your mind. There's also a place if writing to follow us like this with the design them requirement breakfast. Okay, next flow or plot. Growth is often referred to as the way of a story. According to Andri Wicaksono in Writing Creative Literature 2014, the flow is a construction that is made to know a row of logically and chronological, even interconnected and caused or experienced by the perpetrator. Broadly, to groove is the order of stage or story of the story. They include the cognition stage or expression or oriential, the rising action stage, the growing state of conflict or turning point or climax. Lower level of conflict or anticlimactic, the resolution or resolution. Here are the various plot in the short story. Okay, next forward flow. The advanced growth is also often called a progressive. That is a glow. That is the climax is at the end of the story. The series of events it advances grows from the early days to the end of the story with regular and quantity of time backward. Row regression or regression is plot the tale of the past becoming a climax at the beginning of the story. The chain of even the backward flow begin from the past to the present with the construction of time from the past to the present with the inquiry and costly construction of time. Mixed groove, mixed plot, or can be colored and back and forth. Plot is a plot that begins with a climax, then tells the past, and continues until the completion stage. At the time of telling the past, the character in the story are introduced so that when one story has not been completed, go back to the beginning to introduce other character. Okay, next figures. The character is the perpetrator in flow in its story. Talk Hop usually has its own character. In a story, the character is distinguished into the main character and supporting figures. The main character is the most important core role in a story. Supporting figures and figures who complement the existence of the main character. Although supporting figures are often called uniportant figures, it is actually the supporting figures who support the existence of the main character. To determine which is the main character and supporting figure, it can be determined by looking at the quantities of the appearance of the character in the short story. Next, stepping. The character or the character of the story, the already given quality can become contaminated in the mind of speech and the person view of things. Logging method have two kinds. An analysis method is a method of cutting down or naming the character trait directly, such as courage, timidity, and so on. Okay, next will be continued by Wahyuni.
Thanks, Taufik, for the time now. I will continue to explain material. Background. The setting is one of the elements of the story content equipment. Setting refers to the understanding of the place, time relationship, and social environment where the event are told. The background is divided into three, namely the time background, the background of the place, and the atmosphere background. A time is a time when an event occurs in a story, and then the setting of the place in the location where the event in the story occurred. The setting of the atmosphere in a intrinsic relates to the physiological the areas by itself along with the storyline. Next, viewpoint. The perspective is the right way of looking in an event in the story. The point of view is for, among other things, the viewpoint of the person in the main perpetrator. Stop. And the conduct the before him. I will become the focal point of the story. In this view the figure I use as the main figure. The viewpoint of the first person is a sideline. And then my figure appears not as the main character anymore, but as an added figure of the characters present in the storyline, only to bring the story to the readers, while the story character is then allowed to tell itself as the experience. It is the character of the storyline that is left to the story itself that will eventually become the main character because it is the one who perform more, relates even and relates to other. Thus my figure only appears as a witness to the truthfulness of a story narrated by others. My character generally only appears as the introduction and conclusion of the story. The third person point of view is all-knowing. The story from his point of view, but the writer or narrator can relate any of the thing and action concurring his character. The writing know everything, including the storytelling character. Viewpoint of the third observers. This perspective differs from the third person, knowing the point of writing only regarding what the characters see, experience, think about, and feels, but is limited to a single character, usually the main characters, and then others. A mandate is a message from the author of the story to the reader so that the reader can actor do something mandate basically serves to know the moral message of the short story. Group opinions. So from the discussion about apps to write a short story, we concluded that is writing a short story that must be forced, namely taking the time where after the time so that we can have an idea to write a short story. Therefore, in writing short story in its preparation, the ardent plot or slot background point of view and mandate. That is the result of our conclusion. Typically, fact by learning in learning short story, the cause of the large number of students experience this difficulty in the lack of intention and guidance of parents in improving students' reading ability at home. Lack of interest in student learning, not meeting the maximum learning need of students due the pandemic. At least the duration of study hour of last grade student in school. How to deal.
Okay, guys, I want to introduce myself. My name is Fitria Awani. You can call me Fitria. Okay, last speaker explanation. Group opinions. So, from the discussion above how to write a short story, we conclude that in writing a short story that must be first, namely taking the time, whereafter taking the time so that we can have an idea to write a short story. Therefore, in writing short stories in its preparation, there are themes, plots or plots, characters, characterizations, background, point of view, and mandate that is the result of our conclusion. Part D. Difficulties faced by learners in learning short stories. Because of the large number of students experiencing this difficulty is due to the lack of attention and guidance of parents in improving students' reading ability at home, lack of interest in student learning, not meeting the maximum learning needs of the student due to the pandemic, at least the duration of study hours of low grade student in school. How to deal with the difficulties of students in writing short stories. Students must be more active in learning, especially in reading books, because by increasing vocabulary in writing, teachers must recognize the weakness of student in learning. Writing can be done through fairy tales or other reading books. Can use newspaper to be used as clippings or use the concept of mind mapping. Okay, groups opinions, guiding children to understand readings, reading students to encourage interest in learning and reading books and making good and interesting lessons.